Hi, welcome to the Algebra 1, Unit 1, Day 1 notes. We're going to be going over points, lines, and planes in this first video. What I would like for you to do is first imagine these points, lines, and planes. They're probably going to look a little bit different than how you imagined from previous courses, or you're just kind of understanding as you have coming in. I want you to imagine that these are really undefined terms, and because they're undefined terms, we can then use them to build everything else in geometry. If they're undefined, then we're going to be giving them kind of some properties to allow us to then build things off of it. An example here is the point. Point here, when we say that something is a point in geometry, we're saying that it has no size, and that it has no dimensions. It just simply exists. So a point does not have width, length, or height. It just simply exists. When we say something like a point, we might say point A. Or we could just simply write the capital A. The picture of this would be a dot, now point, with the capital A next to it. The next one I want to talk about is a line. A line has one dimension. A line in its dimension extends without end in both directions. The way that we name this, we can actually name lines a few ways. One of the ways we can name lines as line L. So line L. Notice how I made an L. That's actually a cursive letter L. We can also name it using two of the points that we find on the line. So an example of that would be, say for instance we're going to use point A and point B. Then we draw an arrow over both ends. So arrow, arrow, and then that would be line AB. Another way that we can name it, using the same information, is line BA. So if we just reverse the letters. So an example of this, you'll see me frequently grab a straight edge. I usually just grab something nearby and use it as a straight edge to prove that you can just grab something nearby and use a straight edge. This is an ad for a Kohl's flyer, also to remind me that I do have, today's the last day for me to use Kohl's cash. So here, I used a straight edge, and what I did is I created a line using that straight edge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a point, so that's point A, and then point B on this line. I also need to name it line L. The way that we name line L is just off to the side somewhere, near it, without any points that are associated. So you wouldn't put a point next to line L. That would not go together. The next thing we have is plane. A plane has two dimensions. Usually we refer to it as length and width. So this one extends out forever in two dimensions. Way of thinking about that is, think about like a piece of paper. If I have a piece of paper and that's extending without end, then it goes through, has like two dimensions. Imagine, if you will, this continues on forever. A whiteboard that's behind me, imagine if this continued on forever. That's an example of a plane. It extends on forever without ending. Now, whiteboard ends, piece of paper ends, so we have to kind of wrap our brain around like this idea that it continues on forever. Extends in two dimensions. So an example of this we would use in naming, we could name it, we have two different ways. The first way is plane, and then I'm just going to use a lowercase letter. So plane N, not cursive, excuse me. Old habits die hard. Plane N. You can also name a plane by using 3 points that are on the plane that are not collinear. So an example of this would be if I use the word plane, and then let's go ABC. So an example of this, if I have just a plane, there's A, there's B, there's C. Now remember, it continues on forever in both directions, but we're using this kind of as a generic, like, just model for it. And then there's my M. Notice that M is lowercase. All of these other points are uppercase. M is lowercase, and M does not have a point next to it to notate that. We have an idea of collinear points and coplanar points. I just talked about something being collinear. Co means with, and then linear means line. So collinear points are points that are on the same line. So points that exist on the same line. And then an example of this, just if I have kind of the example that we did up above in this line, I could draw another point that exists on this line, and then those points would be collinear. So if I have another point, say for example, if I drew point C, I'm going to use a different color so you can kind of see it better. So point C, so now those points are collinear, points A, B, and C there. Coplanar points are a little bit different. These are points that exist on the same plane. A lot of people might think, oh, well, don't all points on a plane exist? Imagine, if you will, I have a point on this paper so you can see it, but then I also draw a point behind me on the whiteboard. So if I draw a point up here, say point V right there, it's kind of hard to see. Point V right here. I circled it. Hopefully that helps. Point V in there, that point is not coplanar with the points that are on the page. All the points that are on the page could be considered coplanar, but these would not be, because point V is on a different plane than this on the paper. Join me in the next video where we talk about example 1.